Hi, folks. Um, a number of people have asked me to share this story in a more formal setting, so I am going to do my best in front of King Agrippa to tell a story that may move minds. This story starts at the first Passover, the Passover of the Angel of Death over Egypt at 2500 BC, which destroyed the Middle Kingdom in Egypt, led the Hyksos, or Hittite, Empire began in Egypt, and the Israelites headed off into the desert. And it ends with the day Jesus died. Easter, named after Ishtar, the Babylonian name for the planet Venus. You see, to the best of my understanding, it was Ishtar that passed over every 41 to 43 years between the Passover that broke Egypt and allowed the Israelites to start their journey back towards Punt, the Holy Land, or the land that tests men's souls. And the evidence for that is recorded in cultures all over the planet. The Mayans called Ishtar, or Venus, Quetzalcoatl, the fire serpent. And they sacrificed humans to this planet god that they thought, so that she would not destroy the earth again. The Babylonians sacrificed to Venus, Ishtar, so that she would not destroy the earth again. It's that again word that really got me studying the mythology. Because it seems that Exodus didn't just hurt Egypt, but really threw the world into an upheaval at 2500 BC. And then every 41 to 43 years, in the apogee of Venus, the nearest passing of Venus and Earth, every 41 to 43 years, there's another example of a celestial event of biblical proportion that is sort of hard to believe, because we live in a solar system that's calm and peaceful, and planets don't battle for the gravitational fields of others or the atmosphere of others. So we start in Exodus, and we destroy the Middle Kingdom of Egypt as Venus moves over Earth. And Moses follows the electrostatic pillar of fire during the night and pillar of smoke during the day, out across Goshen, a very stable swampland that would not have been affected by earthquakes, while the cities of Egypt would have been destroyed. And they wander in the desert for 40 years. And between 41 and 43 years, after Moses, under Joshua, they come up against Jericho, where angel song destroyed a stone-walled city. The sound from a heavenly body destroyed a stone-walled city. And then 41 to 43 years later, we have Joshua There are so many of these. I'm not sure I have them all in the exact correct order. But another one that is obvious, that is obviously hard to swallow, unless your faith is strong, is King Hezekiah in the Old Testament, in the times of Isaiah. And the Syrians are marching on Jerusalem. And Hezekiah is sick. And Isaiah assures him God will protect you. And Isaiah asks King Hezekiah, God will give you a sign. Would you like God to turn the time clock? A sundial. Forward or backwards? Hezekiah responds, forward's not hard. That's what happens. We want to turn it backwards. So something turned or stopped turning the earth. And the sundial regressed for a number of hours. Something slowed or stopped the rotation of Earth for a number of hours. Some people want us to relegate that to mythology like it didn't happen. But there were a lot of smart people all over the world watching this happen and writing it down so that we would never forget it. And yet we've forgotten. Or we choose not to believe. And this continues. Every 41 to 43 years, on the apogee of Venus, there are strange happenings recorded so that we would not forget it. The last of which, Easter, the day Jesus died. The last conflagration of Venus, Ishtar, that has caused tectonic activity as well as an eclipse on Earth. For those who remember the story, the temple's foundation was rent in two, broken, never to be rebuilt again. The sky was black and the sun was blotted out for 3 hours while Jesus is on the cross. Ishtar, Venus, not the sun, not a solar eclipse, not a lunar eclipse, but the apogee of Venus. The last conflagration before Venus settled into her now stable orbit farther away from the sun. I mean, nearer the sun than Earth. So, great story. Where's the evidence? Well, some of it I've offered as historical mythology, but I offer you this. In physics, a lot of the postmodern science is my religion folks like to believe that we can just turn the planets backwards and just keep counting backwards until we get to the singularity, until we get to the point where everything becomes one at the Big Bang, or just before the Big Bang, or just after, rather, the Big Bang. Which is a good theory. And it may hold some water, except that theory suggests that our solar system developed based on one of two astrophysical theories, the tidal theory and the nebular theory. We were all exposed to these in earth science in junior high. And yet, for our solar system to have evolved through the tidal or nebular theory, there's a problem with the order of planets. Because Mars should be closer to the sun, and Venus should be farther away. But that's not the case. Mars and Venus are on the wrong side of Earth to have evolved in our solar system by either the tidal or the nebular theory. More evidence. The Egyptians in the Middle Kingdom, the end of the Middle Kingdom being the time of the Exodus, they were pretty aware of the stars. And the Egyptian astronomer, who was alive at the time of Exodus, left 2 star charts on the roof of his pyramid tomb, one depicting our solar system before Exodus, and one depicting our solar system after Exodus. And the difference, as you can guess, is before Exodus, no Venus. After Exodus, Venus. More evidence. Calendars before Exodus had 30 days in a month and 360 days in a year. Our present-day calendar has 364 and a quarter days in a year and 28 and a quarter days in a month. So if we are to believe that these calendars were accurate, the Earth is now farther away from the sun, and the moon is now closer to the Earth than it was prior to Exodus. That too does not fit with the Darwinian model of turn the planets backwards and count to the singularity. I mean, the biggest thing to try to figure out is, how did Mars and Venus switch sides on Earth? And, the postmodernists who believe science is my religion have no answer. But those of us who study human history know that Homer's Iliad describes that exact scene. But we're to believe that that's just someone explaining something from an unenlightened perspective. Well, maybe. There's no question that story was written down to leave us a bit of history about what somebody's perspective was. There's no question that the rabbis who colluded to make the Old Testament were trying to tell us something about human history, so we never forgot. The Babylonians had no idea of our postmodern, post-Enlightenment society, and their records of Ishtar are pretty darn clear. So, here we are. Time of year is around Passover and Easter. And I, as a man of faith, indulge not just the mythology, but the history. Because there's a lesson to be learned. And the lesson is the one that the post-Enlightenment science is my religion folks don't want to admit, is that our moral thoughts and our physical actions have consequences in our universe. Just because science has not figured out a metric for karma doesn't mean it's not there. You reap what you sow. And it's entirely possible that Egypt reaped what it sowed by enslaving cultures all over the world. And God threw a screwball at him, named Venus or Ishtar. Pallas Athena to the Greeks. And it's entirely possible that the lesson at the end of that conflagration was taught by a teacher named Jesus. And even though our society didn't want to hear it, it interrupted the Roman culture, it interrupted the Old Testament culture, so much so that they killed him. Some say his spirit, and some even say his body, could not be killed. And he was resurrected. I'll leave that up to the individual. But what we do know is, between the first Passover of Ishtar and the last Passover of Ishtar that caused tectonic activity on planet Earth, they were definitely describing something that happened, and happened in the for real, not in the mythological sense. I would be willing to do more of this. If anybody's interested, please like and share, and I will add more evidence, add more details. This is a 10-year study. It took me a decade to piece this together. And it's worth knowing about if you're interested. I personally remember it every year as it was meant to be, so that we never forget that our thoughts and our actions have consequences, like throwing a stone into a pond and watching the ripples ripple out into the universe.